Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Magic 2015. We're in Portland, Oregon. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe with Zach Hill in the booth, and we are in for the second quarterfinal match here. Matt Sperling, Team Channel Fireball Pantheon. He's playing essentially a burn deck, a current level burn deck, playing against Floch. You can see him there. And he is playing the opposite of that. He is playing the low win condition, long game control deck. Basically, these players have taken complete polar opposite approaches to this format, yet both found themselves in the top 8 here, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, these are both weirdly decks kind of popularized by longtime Magic veteran Adrian Sullivan. You've got the burn deck that basically has inevitability through the ability to just point spells at the opponent's face that they can't interact with. And then the white-blue control deck that has inevitability through just drawing cards and gaining life until your opponent is just, nothing they do matters. So, I mean, really a pretty classic matchup. Both of these archetypes, these strategies have been around for as long as the game has. Really interested to see how this matchup goes in its current iteration in Standard.
All right, Sperling's going to take a couple damage here to play a Sacred Foundry. And an interesting start here for Sperling. He's actually gone 2-drop and a 3-drop creature, though his deck doesn't run that many creatures.
Right, yeah, I think he's only got Pyromancer and Phoenix, maybe I think an Eidolon of the Great Revel.
Correct.
In the main deck. He's got definitely a lot more of those in the sideboard, but Phoenix very powerful in this matchup. Floch does not have Detention Sphere. He's got a couple of Last Breaths, but by and large he plans on killing creatures by destroying them, not exiling them, and that means that Phoenix is going to come back over and over again, turn after turn, as Sperling points burn spells at Floch.
That's right. Young Pyromancer hits the red zone, gets first blood there. Yvonne down to 18. This is Yvonne's first Pro Tour top 8. This is also Matt Sperling's first Pro Tour top 8. So this is both of their first time under the lights on a Sunday here at the Pro Tour stage. They've both had plenty of success in their long careers in Magic, but this is the pinnacle for them so far.
So there's some really interesting strategy going on with Sperling. Even just right now, you see shocks in Sperling's hand, so that allows him to shock, get Phoenix back, theoretically cast it and attack right away, also giving him a token, but he knows the way that Floch can kill his creatures is through mass removal effects. So there's also, theories you could have about, okay, well, maybe I should leverage my Pyromancer, make him use Verdict on that.
Interesting. So Yvonne Floch is going to go for Azorius Charm to really guarantee that he keeps hitting those land drops. He's got a Mutavault activation available, but it feels super risky to activate a Mutavault against Matt Sperling's deck. That's just not something that Floch is really going to want to do here.
Sperling doesn't have the 4th land to go shock into Phoenix, dealing 6 damage on that attack, but you're right, yeah, Floch can't aggressively block with that Mutavault, so I think Sperling, I mean, this is the stage of the game where you just start, slinging burn spells, shock, skullcrack, helix, blood. If all those cards are able to fire, that's, 6, 9, 13, 17 damage right there. So Sperling has enough burn in his hand to kill Floch. He's just got to figure out how to cast it all. And Searing Blood in particular, not just a whole lot of targets in this matchup.
No, I think Mutavault and Soldier Token, I think, are the only ones. That being said, all right, so here's, and you're going to see this from Floch. He's using a Supreme Verdict to take out one Young Pyromancer. That's because he knows that there's very few targets in Sperling's deck that he wants to use it on, and Young Pyromancer is one of the best ones. Interestingly here, I think, the card that I keep staring at in Sperling's hand is Skullcrack. That just seems like such a huge card in this matchup because of its interaction with Sphinx's Revelation.
Yeah, Skullcrack was printed in Gatecrashes back when I was still in R&D, actually as an answer to Sphinx's Revelation, specifically so you could cast it and mitigate that big life gain effect. So very, very, very important when Floch fires off one of those big revs, and actually I think Sperling's in a pretty good position right now.
Floch is going to use up another Supreme Verdict just to take out a single Chandra's Phoenix.
And that's kind of what you have to do. I mean, you can't
just
keep getting hit with Phoenix, but it just does put you in a pretty awkward position.
Sperling's got a nice little draw here. He's got a young Pyromancer, still has 4 or 5 spells left in his hand after that, too.
And what you're going to see now, you see him leaving 2 mana up. We're at the point, yeah.
Go ahead and make your point, and I know exactly where you're going, and so does Floch.
Right, and we're at the point in the game where, you know, revelations are going to be big enough that Sperling can't really afford to let them resolve while gaining life. So Sperling basically going to be keeping up Skullcrack mana probably for the remainder of this match.
Wow, another Supreme Verdict here for Floch, and this one is cast off of a Quicken.
And you see kind of how awkward Supreme Verdict is in this match. I mean, it's been doing work, but he's kind of having to cast it just to eliminate not only one threat at a time, but threats that cost less mana than Supreme Verdict.
And threats that are going to come back pretty soon, too.
Right.
But yeah, you know, Yvonne knows that, especially here in Game 1, when he's got some of the awkward cards, he needs to leverage those to the most of their ability, and that's what he's doing so far. But the real issue for Floch here is that he knows that Skullcrack is looming. Now, he doesn't actually know that, but given the fact that Sperling has been very carefully leaving up the 2 mana every single time, I think Floch is definitely going to be keenly aware of it. So here's a shock to Floch, and that's going to get back the Phoenix. That was on end step. And just more burn spells. They just never end for Matt Sperling.
Did you derive a lot of joy out of saying shock to Floch?
I did.
I mean, the thing about Skullcrack is Floch can fire off a Revelation, get hit with a Skullcrack, and still just have drawn a lot of cards, one of which can be another Revelation.
That's true.
It's not as though Revelation is blank, and I think you do kind of have to cast it. I just hope you draw another Revelation, a way of gaining life. Now, Sperling has Boros Charm, untap into War Leader's Helix, can cast Chandra's Phoenix to attack. So Floch really does need to gain some more life.
Yeah, he really, I mean, that sequence that you just outlined actually just kills Floch.
Right.
Like, without the Phoenix. He's at 7.
Yeah, assuming the Helix resolves. I think
Correct.
a challenging thing about casting War Leader's Helix is your opponent's a deck with 4 dissolves in it. So it's going to be hard to find a window to cast a Helix, whereas like dissolving a Chandra's Phoenix is awkward for a number of reasons. But you're right. I mean, Floch is in very, very real danger of dying.
Yeah, but he's going to get syncopated here, I think, Sperling is, because it only costs 2 mana, and Floch can still leave up mana for a dissolve, which he does have in his hand. Oh, he did draw a second Sphinx's Revelation too, so he can gain 4 life and just basically effectively counter that Boros Charm as well.
Wow.
The question is, does Floch think that Sperling has access to another Skullcrack? Because if he doesn't, then Floch's going to want to wait another turn, counter this. He might be lining up a dissolve here, actually. Yep.
And I think wants to save Syncopate for Chandra's Phoenix.
That's what I'm thinking, too.
But Floch's still in a lot of danger. I mean, he can only fire off a Revelation for one that's effectively not a Revelation right now. He can activate Mutavault and Last Breath It, which is actually relevant in this matchup.
Now, what do you think about... So there was an interesting moment a second ago where Sperling had Floch tapped out from the Revelation and could have actually just fired the Boros Charm off there, but decided to wait until Floch's end step to do it. Is there a thought process there?
I think a thought process is you want to maybe bluff another Skullcrack.
Skullcrack? Okay.
But definitely, Marshall, that's a very valid line. I mean, you know, forcing through 4 damage when you have the opportunity is something that, you know, is extremely relevant when your opponent's at 7,
right,
potentially down to 3, and you can capitalize on it.
Right, because I think that the way you see these decks win a lot of times is when they get you low and then they can resolve multiple burn spells where they just overload your ability to counter them. All right, Chandra's Phoenix hits.
And of course,
Last Breath.
Floch, if he doesn't want to use Syncopate, can just Last Breath the Phoenix.
And that does exile it, so that one's not coming back. Another play that we'll probably see from Floch potentially is Mutavault and then trying to Last Breath his own Mutavault to gain 4 life. That is a little trick that he'll have in his pocket as a last case scenario. Unfortunately, your opponent's main decking Shock plus a bunch of other things that can go horribly awry. But all right, so Floch's got sort of the typical stuff for this deck. He's going to have to pull the trigger here pretty soon on that Sphinx's Revelation, though, because the problem is, of course, that if you wait too long and you go for it, if Matt just decides never to tap out, he can say, in response, here's 2 burn spells, you're dead.
And that's the thing that can happen. You know, the temptation is to try and play around everything, but the longer the game goes, the more your opponent is actually likely to be to just have the card. So it's a tension between wanting to see if you have a window to resolve a revelation and not giving your opponent time to draw the answer that he actually has.
Right. This might be the window right now for Floch to go for it. He's got Sperling down to just 2 lands left, but I think he knows that if Sperling has another skull crack, he's dead.
Right.
If he goes for it.
I mean, the other thing is that, like, you don't want to tap down too low, because even if you're able to gain, like, he could fire off a revelation for 5, 6 now with that hallowed fountain.
He's actually going to 3 here off of that fountain, indicating his intentions. Oh, he's going for 4 here.
And he's keeping Syncopate mana up.
So he is fully playing around Skullcrack here. Now, Sperling doesn't happen to have it here. Does this signal to Sperling is the only card that Floch can have there Syncopate? Like, he's not main decking Negate or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it very loudly signals the Syncopate, but the thing is, having to take 2 damage and Floch resolving that revelation, going up to 9 is still very, very much within striking distance.
Yeah, we see that Sperling's got 2 War Leader's Helix in his hand here.
I mean, now
that's most of the work right there.
Yeah, exactly. And now's a phenomenal window to actually resolve one of that War Leader's Helix if he wanted to. Also is going to be able to resolve Chandra's. And I mean, attacking for 4, Floch is still in big trouble.
I think that Floch's going to be forced to fire off that Azorius Charm, but I love this play from Sperling here. Completely getting around Syncopate and still getting in for a huge... I mean, 4 is a lot at this stage of the game, especially given what Sperling has in his hand.
I think what Floch wants to do is draw an Elixir of Immortality, shuffle back some of the Last Breath and Sphinx's Revelation, all big game at this point. And obviously the 5 life, putting him back to a healthy 14, if he's able to do that.
Right, so Chandra's Phoenix back on top of the library. He's going to take 2, drop to 7. Sperling's going to pass a turn with only 1 untapped mana. So Floch can try to do... I mean, if he had another Revelation, he could do it. I don't think he does, though.
He's got Divination, Jace, Quicken, so he can draw a lot of cards. He just has to draw those cards before Sperling can resolve War Leader's Helix. Because even tapping 3 mana for Divination on his turn, every mana he taps on his turn makes it harder to win a fight with Syncopate over the flurry of burn spells that Sperling could have in his hand.
Really tough spot for Floch here. I mean, he's done a good job maneuvering, but I feel like Sperling is mounting enough pressure here that he's just going to be able to overload Yvonne Floch with burn spells at some point after pecking away with these creatures.
I mean, Sperling can just attack with Mutavault, demand an answer. He can cast Chandra's. He can leave mana up for War Leader's Helix. If he taps low, he's not going to be able to Searing Blood Floch's Mutavault, which might give Floch a window to use that.
Yeah, this is big. If Floch decides to try to block with Mutavault, it's going to open up Searing Blood, and there are precious few targets for Matt Sperling to even point that Searing Blood at, and if he gets to take out a Mutavault with it, it is going to be huge. It's also going to put Floch into death range of 2 different cards in Sperling's hand here. Wow! So a Quicken before blocks reveals Sphinx's Revelation.
Yeah, and that 3rd Revelation is absolutely game-changing. That means if Floch gets to untap, he can fire off something that'll really take him out of range. That also allows him to strategically just fight a counter war over the Searing Blood if that's what ends up happening. It gives him the option of actually just casting Revelation this turn, but I think he's just using those Quicken plus Divination. Just get a lot more information now before he makes a decision.
Okay, so he's going to fire off a, yes, instant speed Divination here. Draw a couple of cards, 2 lands. Sperling's got 4 untapped mana. And I think 4 cards in hand, Zach.
That's what it looks like to me. He's got Searing Blood, a pair of War Leader's Helix, and Chandra's Phoenix. Sperling checking out the graveyard, saying, okay, what is Floch likely to have? What do I need to worry about playing around? question is, do you activate Mutavault? Are you willing to fall to 5?
Another Quicken here for Floch.
Now, this is actually really relevant because if he activates Mutavault to block and Sperling Searing Bloods it, he actually doesn't have enough mana to syncopate the Searing Blood successfully unless he taps his Mutavault, which still results in him taking 2 more damage.
Yeah.
You see Floch
I think that says it all, right? Yeah.
I mean, all of that being said, he can fall to 5, untap, and just jam a Revelation out there. Syncopating for 2 just to tap Sperling out, tap him out of the potential for skull cracking, is a relevant piece of information for Floch to have. Opens up a big window for a huge Revelation.
This is pretty incredible stuff, Zach. I mean, we're talking about it as if Floch just knows for sure about the Searing Blood, right?
Oh, right.
There's so much that it's going to happen here. All right, there we go. And there it is. Sperling can't wait to fire off Searing Blood. And there it is. He's doing exactly what you said, Zach. He is attempting to tap out Matt Sperling and does it. Remember, this is all on Sperling's turn. So he takes 5 here. Drops down to 2, and Sperling, of course, has to know what's going to happen here.
Wow.
And it is going to be for 7.
So, I mean, that only gets Floch to 9. I mean, Sperling with an attack for 2 from Mutavault, 4 from Warleader's Helix can get him down to 3, but Floch is to the point where he's going to start being able to chain Elixirs and Sphinx's Revelations very, very soon. Sperling also could have just played a land and shock, but Floch's seen 2 shocks already, didn't really fear that last turn.
He's discarding a few lands. All right. So let's see if Sperling can put together a comeback hand here.
Oh, man. 4 more damage.
Is that Stoke the Flames?
Is Stoke the Flames. He's got a lot of lines. He can play Phoenix attack with Mutavault. He can cast a Helix attack with Mutavault. He can cast Stoke.
All right, so hit you for 4 while you're completely tapped out. Drop you down to 5, Floch. And ship the turn back with just 1 mana available. All right, so what can Floch do here? Did he find another Sphinx's Revelation? He's got Matt Sperling with just 1 mana up, so he knows he can't get skull cracked here, but Sperling looks like he has put the pedal to the metal on this game, and I think that Floch is going to have to do something huge here very quickly, because I think that Sperling's had enough fussing around, and he's going to start just throwing those spells at Floch's face.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what Floch has to draw are counter spells, the 4th Revelation, remember he's used 3 already, or Elixir of Immortality. Those are the spells that are live. The creature removal, the creatures in Sperling's deck have already done their damage. Sperling just waiting for a window to unleash those big helixes, stoke the flames. I mean, 4 damage is a lot of damage as a burn deck. That said, Floch has Jace, Architect of Thought X2, Azorius Charm, Quicken, can draw. It can look at potentially 6 cards if he wants to. It takes a lot of mana to do that. Realistically, though, he can still see about 4 cards this turn without having to commit too much. So a lot can happen on this turn for Floch. The question is, how does he want to sequence his plays?
Right, and he has to do something. Right now, his hand is not going to win. He will lose to Sperling's hand, given what he's got now. The Jaces don't do much on their own. Supreme Verdict isn't doing enough. Planar Cleansing to Azorius Charm, even Quicken. So he needs to find some of those counter spells you just mentioned a second ago, Zach, or the last Revelation.
Yeah, Quicken Supreme Verdict saves him from the line of activate Mutavault attack with Phoenix. Azorius Charm can save him 2 damage, but wow, just passing without being able to cast Jace. I mean, this opens Floch up. That means he's only able to draw 2 cards maximum this turn.
Is he trying to bait Matt Sperling into activating that Mutavault here and get him with Planar Cleansing? Is that what his line is? Because he's left up so much extra mana. You kind of assumed he would play Jace, plus or minus Jace, whatever he saw fit, and then kind of take it from there. But now he's just passed the turn back with 1,000,000 mana open. And there's an Eidolon of the Great Revel. And that's going to make that Quicken pretty awkward, and I feel like Floch might need to respond to that with the Quicken here if that's his plan.
spells, I'll play Kukan.
Okay.
Okay.
Quicken into Syncopate.
And that's live because Syncopate
Yes.
pretty easily can counter these big burn spells.
He also could counter the Eidolon if he wanted.
Right.
He doesn't. He's just going to go for the good old Wrath. Supreme Verdict. And Sperling's going to pass the turn back. So Sperling not falling for it, leaving his Mutavault back. And Floch manages to take nothing. Sperling so close. He's got Floch down to 5, and he has 2 different spells that do 4. What does Floch find?
He draws Last Breath, which can deal with the Mutavault, but Floch's Mutavault dying to Searing Blood. No longer the option to Last Breath his own spells. He needs to hit something off this Jace. Syncopate buys him a turn, but Sperling can come right back at him with a Mutavault attack and another 4 damage spell.
There it is.
Lethal.
Elixir
Oh,
of Immortality. Wow. He's found it. He's also going to find out if Sperling has a Skullcrack.
Yeah.
But he's got the Syncopate now as well, so...
And that is exactly what he needed to find. Also, unlike a Revelation, it doesn't require him to tap low. He can Elixir and activate it with plenty of Syncopate mana up. That was a huge draw for Floch. And Floch with that glib smile, he's so hard to get a read on. He always feels like he just has it every single time.
Huh. I think that Eidolon may have attacked the turn it came into play.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it did. Ultimately,
there was
it
a big
wasn't
sequence.
a consequence
Right.
because it just died. I mean, Sperling knows that Floch's removals are essentially all mass removals, so ultimately it didn't have an impact on the game. But yeah, I think you're exactly right.
I think it battled. Because there was that big flurry when it was on the stack. Okay.
I mean, that's what Quicken does, right? It gives a creature haste. Okay, well, maybe not.
It certainly doesn't make Floch's deck any faster, I'll tell you that. Now, he needs to just crack this immediately, right? Where he can still leverage Syncopate to the most of its ability.
I think so, unless you want to maybe like cycle an Azorius Charm first, but that seems a little risky. Yeah, and I think.
But I mean on his turn.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you want to give your opponent just more mana to be able to try and work around activating it, respond to your Syncopate. Yeah, the temptation is to always do stuff at instant speed on your opponent's turn. And I guess that's what he does. It might be right.
No response.
All right, so we have a response here. Syncopate for 1. So counter it, but now he needs to crack the Elixir, right? There we go. So he's got Matt tapped out, no fear of Skullcrack here.
And relevantly, shuffling Syncopate back into his deck. Syncopate, one of his many live cards. You want, when you activate Elixir of Immortality, to just increase the density of relevant live spells in your deck. That's what the card does. So every single one of a copy of a spell that you care about gives you just that much more advantage.
Sure. Now, is there a line here for Matt to win this turn? Like, with some type of fortunate draw here or something? I mean, Floch's at 9. He's got a Mutavault in play. There's a Phoenix in the yard. There's a War Leader's Helix in his hand. Like, can he piece together 9 damage in one turn? It feels like a stretch.
Floch has Last Breath Azorius Charm, so that Mutavault not going to deal damage. I think Sperling just wants to draw like Skullcracks until the end of time.
Right.
He still can create a relevant play. I mean, he's going to force the Last Breath or Charm by either attacking Jace or attacking Floch. He can get through. I mean, he wants 8 mana, but he doesn't have it. He has 7. So he can't get through both Helix and Stoke the Flames. We can force action here and resolve at least one of those 4 damage spells, which forces Floch to draw something.
This is a nice one from Floch. He's going to use Azorius Charm to put Mutavault back on top and kind of strand a bunch of cards in Sperling's hand. He's got 2 4-mana burn spells and a mountain.
So Sperling can kill Jace if he wants to. He can deal 4 to the face if he wants to. Yeah.
You, he says. Redirect? No way, right?
I mean, it's really challenging. Jace represents, I mean, right now there are 4 Sphinx's Revelations in Floch's deck.
Oh, man.
So every single card is just a clock ticking down. And so he's got to compute, is an activation of Jace more or less likely to be worth 4 life points?
Okay.
And I don't know what the answer to that question is.
Looks like he's thinking about it right now. I think he did kill Jace.
26.
He did. He killed Jace, and this is just such a tough fight for Matt Sperling. Once you're forced to start throwing burn spells at your opponent's planeswalkers, now all of a sudden they're pulling double duty, protecting his life total. Was that a divination?
That was a divination, and I mean, this is what Floch's deck does. Once you activate Elixir and the ball gets rolling, divination 2 cards. This Jace is going to look at 3 cards.
Yikes.
9 life means that Sperling just does not quite have enough mana or cards to finish Floch off. He's got 4 damage. Mutavault, Floch knows is on top of Sperling's deck, so he doesn't have to worry about a top deck now. And Jace and Azorius Charm, Mutavault, just more and more relevant cards. The game's spiraling further and further out of control for Sperling.
Wow. And you got to figure that Yvonne Floch is his deck gets a lot better post-board. I'm assuming we're going to have a chat with him that BDM sat down with, but I mean, he's got so many cards that are just super awkward, like those Supreme Verdicts. He's managed to leverage them pretty decently, but he's 1-for-1ing with his 2-drops. Like, you know, it's not exactly what he wants to see at this point.
I know he's got 4 copies, I think, of Nyx Fleece Ram in the sideboard. Just an absolute nightmare for red decks.
Wow. Yeah. All right, Stoke the Flames, target you.
Results.
It resolves. That's going to get back a Phoenix.
Yeah. Phoenix.
He's going to play it and attack and Last Breath the Phoenix. So Floch's down to 5 now.
30. Yeah.
And I believe that Sperling's out of cards. Yeah, he's empty. So here we go. Can Floch turn this thing around? He needs to gain some life again. I mean, there's some number of turns that he's going to have to gain some amount of life, and then he's going to really put this thing away. And there's the Sphinx's Revelation. Right on time. He's probably going to fire it off right now. Maybe during the upkeep so that he can keep all the cards, but either way, boom. 10.
Jeez.
And Floch jumps up to 15. And if you're sitting in Sperling's seat, that's got to feel like the nails in the coffin on game 1.
I'm trying to think about what the reason for main phasing it is. I think you can draw land Elixir of Immortality and cast it right away, which seems really, really, really good. Just get more information, make sure Sperling doesn't have any mana untapped, play an extra land.
Go to discard.
Oh, no. I mean, this is this is exactly the situation that you do not want to be in against a Sphinx's Revelation deck, where they just have a grip full of cards, a healthy life total, and now they're making decisions about what they don't want the most. I mean, they're going to keep 7 of the best cards in their entire deck in their hand, and this is a massive uphill battle for Sperling to fight.
So Floch discarding to hand size here, but it looks like he's turned the corner fully and is going to be able to craft a win here as piling together 15 damage for Matt Sperling while drawing 1 card a turn is just not going to be realistic. He finds a lightning strike. He can attack with Mutavault here.
And look at that hand from Floch. Syncopate, Dissolve.
Jeez.
Jace for more cards. Pair of Quickens can cycle those.
He's going to plus Jace this time and pass a turn back.
I think Floch is thinking about, okay, now we're near the stage of the game where I can start to really think about how to put this game away. Sperling drew a Chandra's Phoenix, so this is relevant for Floch as he can use Quicken into Supreme Verdict to deal with it. He can also Azorius Charm it back to the top of the deck. He can syncopate it if he wants it to, but it's still going to mandate some sort of answer.
All right, here's Quicken. Even though the Mutavault's only a 1/1, Verdict it away. And now this is where Yvonne Floch has such an embarrassment of riches that he can just start throwing, like any 1-for-1 he'll take. Just It doesn't matter what it is.
And I like syncopating that Phoenix just to not have to worry about it.
Floch taps out. Sperling doesn't use his lightning strike, but the writing's on the wall here as Floch now gets to go through a bunch more cards in his deck with those Quickens and that type of thing.
Okay.
It's cosmic bowling time here in the feature match area.
You're just starting.
Floch. We're just starting.
That's the
Yes,
stage
sir.
subtly
Yes, sir.
reacting to the gloom that is hanging
I have
over this
12 cards
match.
in my hand, just saying that.
Keep drawing. Can't see anything.
I go to discard.
I don't know.
I think I played planes this turn, right? Yes, you did. Okay.
He's trying to remember what he played, but he can't see it apparently. So.
Some mood lighting. Great.
Hey guys, welcome back to the booth. We'll pop over here while we get the lights back up to speed in our feature match area. But you know, we've really seen Ivan Floch turn the corner here, and what I'm starting to turn my focus to, you know, I don't like to end the game too early, but I just can't see a way for Sperling to come back from what Floch's going to be able to do as far as card velocity goes. Assuming that Floch is able to finish it off, what I'm really curious is, doesn't this matchup just get better for Floch post-board?
I mean, that would be my assumption because he has so many cards that are just not that exciting. I mean, on the other hand, if he like boards out all of his cleansing and verdicts, that means that, you know, Sperling just board in some more creatures. So we'll have to see what happens.
All right, we're back down in the feature match area here. We've got Jace, Architect of Thought, ticking upwards. So whenever I see Floch do that, I know he's now going for the kill.
Yes, exactly. I mean, unless there's like a board full of 1/1s or something, usually you're just using Jace to draw cards until you're trying to put the game away.
Right, and now he's firmly in put the game away mode.
Upkeep.
He's got a million lands. And there's an upkeep effect here for Matt Sperling.
Stoke you.
Stoke you. So Floch has to be careful, right? You don't want to make a silly slip up here down the stretch when you have all the tools you need to win the game.
I'll counter that.
He's done all the heavy lifting, and he's just going to counter it. Dissolve.
Oh, yeah, you upkeep. Sure. Draw.
cards?
Might
I
just
want
fire off a medium-sized revelation here in case there's anything else he wants to do on these main phase. Might also just tap out.
And go.
He's going to say go here.
Now in your upkeep.
And during your upkeep, now how big is this going to be for Floch? 7.
All the way back up to 20. Went as low as 2 in
20,
this
30.
match. All the way up to 20. That is exactly what this deck does.
Yep.
Go on.
Yeah.
And that's going to do it. Matt Sperling has seen enough. Ivan Floch sitting at 20 life after having his life total fluctuate all over the place over the course of that match. You get a look at our viewing area there just for a moment, but we've got, you know, this event is open up to the public. So we do have the ability to, people can come here if you're in the area and watch on the screen out in the floor. It's pretty exciting stuff as we go down. So what we've got is BDM actually had a chat with Ivan Floch and talked to him about what his sideboard plan was for this specific matchup. Let's take a look at that.
All right, Ivan, tell me what you do in this sideboarding plan to offset all the firepower in Matt's deck.
Okay. First thing I want to say is that sideboarding is really tricky in this matchup because he has multiple threats in Chandra and his creatures, which obviously I need to answer in different ways. And also, he has so many cyber cards for my Nyx-Freeze Rams and Archangels of Truth. And the tricky part is how many of those answers he will cyber in, and how many of answers of mine I want to have against his creatures and his Chandras. Basically, it's going to be very different on play, on draw. And I'll definitely cyber in Rams, Last Breaths, which are great, and Archangels, maybe not, because if he sides like all Glory Heresies and Chain to the Rogues and Banishing Gliding, he has like multiple answers for Archangel, and it might be not that good. And yeah, that's in. And the question is how many counters I keep for his Chandra, and how many creature removal I keep his for early creatures and Mutables and Pyromancers.
So it's a little bit of a guessing
Yes,
game for you.
it's really a little bit of a guessing game. It's going to be different on play, on the draw. On play, I need more Supreme Verdicts. On draw, on play, I need less Supreme Verdicts. On draw, I need more. So we'll see.
Okay, good luck the rest
Okay,
of the match.
thank you.
All right, so interesting stuff there. He didn't sound. It didn't sound like the matchup really changed that much post board. It sounded like maybe it tilted in his favor a little bit.
Well, I think it's less a question of percentages because it's really more of a guessing game, because the percentages are going to be very different depending on whether you guessed right or wrong. If you leave in, a bunch of creature removal and you're Sperling, and your opponent doesn't have Archangel of Thunes and is leaning on the Rams less heavily, obviously you're making your deck way worse, and it's kind of like rock, paper, scissors. You guessed wrong, and so your opponent has a huge edge. If you guess right and you can position those cards correctly against each other, I think you're putting yourself in a position to win the match. So, this is exactly the art of sideboarding. This is constructed level Magic at its finest.
Love it. Let's see what Matt Sperling thinks about sideboarding for this matchup.